put in this computer.
There we go. Okay, I hate to interrupt, but keep going.
Hey, hello, everybody. Michael McGinnis here. Hey, today's session, I can't wait for it. Frankly, this is one of these incredible confirmations that I had upon getting to know Tom Sawyer. You know, we've referenced him in several shows, and that's really the basis of the ripple effect, is the impact people can have. Well, to me, this experience was one of these profound experiences he shared, and you'll understand that as we get into the conversation on this. But for me, it was also really key, is because it proved to me. Here was Tom, this blue collar kind of guy, come back from this death experience, not only with amazing story, and these abilities. And this is an example of the abilities that he had and what sort of evolved from that, and the kind of work that he got into. Confirmation of not only death and dying is real, but the fact is that people come back not only with incredible stories, but incredible experiences. So we're great to have with us today the band, and we have over here, you see Tom Williams, going to be our speaker on this. Leading in this is Richard Hughson.
I'm called owner here today.
Yes.
I don't know what I own, but I'm the owner.
And then from the ethereal plane, we have, oh, yes.
There you go.
Yes, we have Jesus. And then Jesus is coming to us. Hey, Jesus, you got to speak up a little bit. We can't hear you here. Get your act together.
Oh, yes, I'm on. Cream.
So you can also see that after-death experiences, like Jesus went through, changes people, as you can see.
Okay.
Yes. All right. So the rest of us will mute ourselves here, and I'm going to turn it over to Richard to really debut this incredible story. Richard?
Hello, thank you very much. I want to go over some of the difficulties that Tom had trying to understand this, and the questions in his mind about what he was supposed to do with the knowledge he had. As Mike said, he came back with a lot of abilities, but he also came back with a lot of responsibilities. And quite often he would have information that he didn't know what he was supposed to do with. This was one of those situations, and it was pretty important to him. We'll get to the implications of that closer to the end of the talk. But as psychic information often comes, it's difficult to understand what is meant. Some of the things, I don't have this all in order, but some of the things he was aware of was that Thomas Stearns had a message for him. And he was going a little bit wacky trying to figure out who Thomas Stearns was. He would bring up the name in every conversation he was in, look through the phone book, all kinds of things, just trying to search for where is this Thomas Stearns. And the imagery in his mind was of Thomas Stearns' mother yelling out the back door for Thomas Stearns to come home for the evening, or to come to supper or something like that. She'd open the door and yell, "Thomas Stearns!" And his understanding was that guy had information for him, and rather than the mother knowing it. So he was looking around for who Thomas Stearns is and what might he have. Another thing that came up was the musical Cats came out at around this time, and he understood that was important to go see, but no idea why it was important to go see the musical Cats. And it was only playing in New York City, which is a 5-hour drive away with $100 and some tickets. It's not something he would typically run and do. As he was, I should have made more notes. There were other bits and pieces that aren't coming to mind at the moment. But one of the unique things that happened is a touring version of Cats came to Rochester. And he immediately bought tickets to go and see this thing, having absolutely no idea why he is there, what it has to do with. And as these cats are doing stuff on stage, it was all nice and well done and all that. But at one point, if you're familiar with the musical, these cat characters live in a junkyard. So there's tires, stacks of tires here and there, as well as car parts and whatnot. And one of them spoke the word tire in a cat-like manner, stretching it out to be in the song to be Tyre, and that caught his ear. As soon as the lights went up for whatever the intermission or the end of the thing was, he grabbed the program and was flipping through it and found the word tire in the English spelling, Tyre. He understood then that this event he had an understanding of would happen in Tyre, Lebanon. And the Thomas Stearns who had a message for him was Thomas Stearns Eliot, T.S. Eliot, who wrote the original Book of Cats. And he wondered quite a lot, was T.S. Eliot intelligent enough to know that, to get this together, there's two things here. Intelligent enough to know that what he is putting into this book will be heard by someone or even by Tom Sawyer himself, and he will need to know that word Tyre, Tyre. It's just a question he always had. The other thing was about cats. It was when when one of T.S. Eliot's nephews, nieces, whatever, kids, uh, descendants came to him and asked him how to name a cat, asked him to help name a cat. Thomas Eliot instantly understood, here's an opportunity. He would write these individual letters to all these kids, telling these stories of these different cats, and understood that he would become famous enough that someone would put them all together in a book, and in the hopes that someday someone will read that book and recognize T.S. Eliot's concept of reincarnation. That was why he did all those stories about cats to begin with, and leaves the question about whether he knew that Tom Sawyer or someone like Tom Sawyer would need to see the word Tyre in it. So, excuse me. So Tom had now had T.S. Eliot and T.S. Eliot's concept of reincarnation, which is adjacent to the story, not a part of it, but the understanding of an malicious nuclear explosion that was to happen in Tyre, Lebanon, in the warm months, in the hot part of the year, around 1988. And all this stuff kind of just gelled and came together as over I don't know how much time. It may have been one of the things that he came back from his near-death experience knowing. It may be something that he simply became aware of sometime previous to 1988 and had to spend the time searching. But the difficulty for him of putting this all together was compounded with what was his responsibility. He understood this to be a malicious nuclear explosion, a dirty bomb. It wouldn't be an actual atom bomb going off, because the perpetrators of it were not that advanced to build an atom bomb, but they could gather enough nuclear material to explode it with a normal detonation device and spread it everywhere. Just have nearly the effect of an atomic bomb just by blowing it up with dynamite, TNT, whatever they had, by just spreading that stuff, blowing up into the atmosphere and around the area. The reason that was so important at that time, and Tom, I'm going to ask you to jump in here pretty quick, is he understood that that was a cusp of a moment. Like a timeline is running along here. There's a cusp of a moment where something can change, and it can either keep going up or go back down. And that cusp was attitudes. If that explosion had occurred, it would have created a cascading effect of decreasing less spiritual attitudes around the world, where people would start thinking, well, everything's going to go to pot anyway, I might as well get what I can, rather than the compassionate view of, let's take care of each other, let's take care of the earth, let's take care of the homes we live in. It would be I can't come up with the word for the loss of spiritual attitude. The attitude would become very selfish rather than compassionately spiritual toward the earth and other people. And that explosion would have been the key. So he was trying to figure out what he was supposed to do about it. If he's been given all this information, to be able to figure out what it is, where it is, about when it's going to happen, then is he supposed to do something about it? Is this white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed white guy supposed to travel to Tyre, Lebanon, and walk around figuring out how to stop the nuclear explosion? That's impossible right in the face of it. But why does he know all this stuff? And he had a lot of connections in the military due to another whole story we can get into someday. But he knew generals in the military, very high-ranking generals who were the heads of entire departments, such as the Human Technologies Task Force. And he became very good friends with these people to the point where they just flat out trusted him. When he would say, this is what's going on, this is what I feel is important, they would trust him. They could not tell him what they knew because that's classified information. But they would take what he knew very seriously and add it to the classified information. So in those years, he was doing a lot of TV shows. Someone asked me once, how did he get on those shows? What kind of advertising did he do? If he did none, it was all word of mouth. He was just so impressive to listen to that everybody wanted to hear from him. So whichever TV show, I forget which one this was, Oprah or Donahue, one of the big ones, he was considering in his mind whether to say something about this explosion. Had not spoken to anyone about it other than his military friends, and they were giving him no information about what they were doing. Obviously, he's a civilian, and they're all it's all highly classified. So on his way out the door to head for the airport to go do this TV show, the first and only thing he ever said was to turn to his wife Elaine and say, well, your husband's going to make a fool of himself on national TV. And he closed the door and walked out. When he got to the station, there were two really big guys waiting for him saying, Mr. Sawyer, we'd like to talk to you. Would you kindly step into this room? And he has said, in my presence, he said, I always assumed anyone bigger than me is dumber than me. I missed the joke right then. I should have said, huh? What? And it didn't, I wasn't smart enough to think of it. But he says, those guys surprised me. Not only was it obvious they would have been well trained in defense techniques, but they were really sharp, and they somehow said enough to him that he chose not to say anything about this nuclear detonation on the air. I believe it was I'm thinking now it was the Donahue show, and specifically was going to say it there because they did not use a 7-second delay. Whatever happened on the stage got out on the airwaves without a 7-second delay, so that they could quick shut somebody off or go to a commercial or something like that. So that was his considered plan at the time that he went there. He had, and before he went there, as he was talking to his friends in the military, he sat down one time and started writing a map of Tyre, Lebanon, and the exact location of the building that this explosion was going to occur within. And it was the map. I got to see the map one time, and here's a drawing of the water's edge and buildings, streets, and whatnot. And the distance from the water's edge to the building was a couple of miles in inches and feet. Being a carpenter, he got the information for that length in feet and inches, not in a mile and a half, about a couple of miles. He had it down to the inch, which prompted us to tease him about, well, is that a high tide or low tide? So the military had a ton of information. He had no information. After talking to these two guys, he went out and did the show, but was still questioning in his mind, should I say something or not? And could not really explain why he did not say something. This was going to be a world event due to the cascading of attitudes, and he felt was extremely important. Um, he said nothing, and then later on was able to be told by his friends in the military, the thing they had to do was wait for them to bring in the nuclear material. They wanted to wait until they had all the people there and all the material, and that had to be wait. You had to wait till the last second, and nobody could know anything about it. This is why these two guys met him at the station of the TV show. He was very sure no one had ever been on his property to plant a bug of any kind. He once woke up in the middle of the night and shook Elaine awake, saying, "There's a rabbit eating your roses." They had a little garden out back. And he knew what the moment a rabbit stepped onto his land. He was that sensitive. And I could give you 1,000 examples of times when he would know something that someone had done or was thinking. Myself personally, many times, what I had been thinking, he would refer to, but nothing I had ever said. So his sensitivity was so high, he was certain no one had ever been on the property to plant a bug. To hear him say to Elaine, your husband's going to make a fool of himself on national TV. But somehow they picked it up. How they were watching him, he was never able to say. But he didn't say it, and the military was very well prepared, waiting for the right time to jump in and capture everybody. If they jump too soon, they'd only capture some of them, and the others could go on planning. If they might capture part of the nuclear material, but not all of it. They had to wait till they got all of them in the building and all of the material. Then they could jump in and make sure the entire process was shut down. And the thing that really ticked him off the most was that these people called themselves the sons of God. In the Bible, there's a difference between people called the sons of man and people called the sons of God. And the fact that these guys took on the title of sons of God while so clearly being sons of man, of the lower impulses of human psychology, that bothered him a lot, that they would be so brash to the about that. The thing about Tom, you want to fill in a little bit about the stuff, some of the notes you got there?
There we go.
Unmute.
There we go. Yeah. Yeah. So just a quick little continuation of that story as I heard it or understood it. That one of the guys who was to maybe pull the thing or to do something had a change of heart, or he had a feeling, and that something made him go slower, or something made him slow down, or shifted his movement in some way or another. And he was saying that that was the result of the prayer work, that because a number of us were aware of this.
Yeah.
You and Mike and others were aware of this scenario that he had talked about, because, and without saying much, he just said there was something happening, and I think it was during priesthood conference at one point, where there was this urgency for us to really focus our energy to try to avoid this circumstance. It was in August or late July when those conferences were.
Yeah.
Whenever. And so a number of us were praying or thinking positive energies towards this event in trying to help thwart it in some fashion or form. And I remember him saying something, and maybe in one of the late night talks or sometime or another, that the effect of the prayer work, that those of us who were doing that had an effect on one person in particular in that group that you mentioned, to either alter his steps or to slow him down or to shift in some form or fashion so that it was delayed enough that this would have been so they were able to stop that from happening.
Mm-hmm.
There was something about that. While in preparation for this talk, I did a little research on Islam and on Tyre. And Tyre, the interesting thing about it is that that was considered the birthplace of Europe or Europe.
Oh.
Tyre. The whole European movement developed out of this. So this history of how the Ottoman Empire and World War I and all of these different, there was a lot of stuff around Islam. And when it started, Islam means the submission to the will of God. That's what Islam means.
Okay.
Muhammad got his insights from, according to the belief system, from Gabriel, the angel, that gave Muhammad the information through dreams and through experiences of the beginnings of Islam. Islam is related. One of the issues in the early beginnings of Islam is this shihad, the word shihad, which means struggle. And the the faith in Shahad, what perhaps these people who were wanting to do this saw themselves as defending their faith. Muhammad, after his, let's imagine that Tom Sawyer, now we're all quoting Tom Sawyer, right? And there's 4 of us here, and we each have a different impression about what Tom Sawyer said, just like with Jesus, right? With Christianity, modern Christianity struggles from the same problem. How many denominations are there? How many different belief systems are there? And what did Jesus say, and so forth? Islam went through the same identity crisis after Muhammad left. But Muhammad or Islam was based on the idea that they wanted to go back to what they called the origins of their faith, of the prophets. And they considered the prophets of Solomon, Jesus, Moses, Abraham, Noah, Adam, all of the older traditions. What Islam was attempting to do was to go back to the roots of a more structured and even perhaps rigid ideology, to the old ways.
Yep.
And so the people who were following Islam kind of at the beginning of that were wanting to go back in time and to hold on to the more conservative approach to religion. And at the same time, then there was the New World and Europe in particular, which Tyre was the birthplace of the new approach or new ways of looking at things and the more advanced culture. So there was a struggle between, the struggle then is between the new dispensation of truth and the will of God and the old. So we're dealing with, and the wars in the meantime, World War I, between the industrial development and all of that goes along with the European, approach of reaching out and finding new ways of exploiting, wealth and developing buildings and developing power. So the conflict is between the development of power and holding on to the more conservative approach. So that's the struggle. And my sense about that experience, why Tyre was chosen, and I know that there are a lot of scholars in Islam that would probably know this and research this and think of Tyre as the place, since it was the birthplace of Europe. That would be a logical place to do this, to in a sense do what you were saying, which is to shift everything up so that it was confusion and so that there was, all of this new development. It would shake that up.
Yeah.
So because they called Europa means great powers. That's what Europa stands for. So it's a power struggle, and we're still dealing with that. Obviously, look what we just went through.
Yeah.
And what we are going through. So I think the ripple effect here is that we're still dealing with, and that was one episode where, there are tipping points, or there are points at which the water is filling up and then it spills over, or some shift takes place and it refocuses. So I think we're at another one of those refocusing times similar to that. And so maybe the reason why you're thinking, why we're even talking about it, because how many years ago was that?
88.
I mean, this is old news, right?
Yeah.
But how is it relevant now? Why are we talking about it? Why is this relevant? Because that's the way we're looking at these things.
Yeah.
And so the relevance is that, the looking at the will of God what is the will of God? Are we saying that I know the will of God and that you know the will of God and that we know more better than somebody else knows? So there's an element of, I'm reminded of an experience that we had in one of our trips when we were going to Egypt. And I think it was at the beginning of the trip. And I think Kara was on this trip. It was the big trip that we had. We went to Athens. You were on that, Mike, right?
Mike was.
We were in Athens, and we went climbed to the top of the, I guess it's the Parthenon, and we were talking about changing the past or changing the old paradigm from male-dominated to having women become more a part of the, sharing the power, I guess is the way to say that. The
More
old
balance.
paradigms, the old way of looking at things, the old masculine dominant approach and the feminine. So that was a place we were going because it was the temple up there. There was the temple of was it Athena? Anyway, beside the Parthenon, there's the goddesses that are around in that building. So we get up there after making, this is part of our journey. And for those of us that were on that trip, a lot of us were looking at everything we did as an initiation. Every moment, every step. We get to the top and we're talking about releasing the old male, and a man had just died up there. An old guy had just died when we got up there, and they had laid him on a wall near, I guess it was a visitor center or something. He was laying on the wall there, this, flat surface. And while we were there, he must have died while we were going up there. And there wasn't a big to do about it. People were just walking past. But at some point they came and got the guy and took him off. And I thought how interesting that just at the time that we're going up there for this whole idea of releasing the old male dominant figure and having the new, more balanced, this old guy dies. So it was like symbolic of that, that shift and what we were going through. So often these kinds of dramatic occurrences would take place or do take place around us, and we don't see the connection. We don't quite see how that's reflective of, like a real live drama of what it is we're actually going through. So anyway, that's just to say that I think this conversation has some significance beyond just recounting a story. That there is significance to thinking about what is it that this is about? What are we looking at? And we're still in the process of trying to avoid wars and people's consciousness shifting towards a more negative approach and becoming jaded or becoming so angry that they don't want to work together anymore. They want to break down the Capitol. They want to destroy history or destroy, let's say, culture, or to destroy norms, tradition. So we have this struggle going between wanting to, now we have a president who everybody's saying, fine, back to normal again. Well, sorry, we're really not back to normal again. We have gone through a threshold, and there's half of the country is thinking this way, another half is thinking this way, and even those are fragmented. Mm-hmm. So you've got fragments within the fragments. And what is the common good? What is the common belief system? What is the will of God? And what is what's our struggle? So we have guidance. We have those of us that are having conversations, and this kind of conversation is what needs to be taking place, where people share, as you might share their stories. And from that, you learn something about yourself. And you mentioned it yourself about having Richard, you heard what he shared, and it meant something to you.
Yes.
So it's in our shared collective consciousness and our coming together as a multifaceted body, singular body, all these little bodies coming together. And because we are part of a larger body, we are the God, in the larger sense. And so it's not about finding my identity and your identity and finding who's got the right thing, who's got the truth. It's the truth is what manifests from the coming together, and the revelation that comes together when we put the pieces together, the puzzle piece. The puzzle is revealed when we put the pieces together, not one piece of the puzzle is the truth, So
Right.
Anyway, that was kind of what got me triggered when we were thinking about and I've started to look at some of this about why Tyre, and why perhaps that was, whether it was chosen or not, I don't know, but it certainly makes sense to me that symbolically that was, since that was the birthplace of what a lot of people in the fragmented portion of Islam, the people have become more violent, as in our movement now in America, those people have become more violent. That's the struggle. And their truth, what they believe as truth, where does that come from? There's these elements of fantasy and the whole truth phenomenon of the Trump era is, fake news and all of that, is a part of what we're looking at right now. What is truth?
Yeah, the thing that I read some time ago was when the actual real truth, the actual real all of us together that you're mentioning about is the love, compassion, and human decency. And that's actually a fluid thing from one situation to another. What is the compassionate thing to do can change from one situation to another. But when people get introduced to this sort of thing, you can grasp and understand it, like talking about a population, not just a person, but a population. You can see the prophet teaching it, having a grasp of that sense of fluidity, and the people only hearing what they're capable of hearing, which is rules. It's the old thing with come on, big words get me. A fanatic. A fanatic is someone who redoubles their effort after having lost sight of the goal. And this I'm hearing you say that about these people back there in Tyre, Lebanon, who no longer grasped real truth of God, but had their set of rules that they think this is what it is and want to force everybody back to that.
And and a lot of that is payback, or it's like they've been injured. I mean, there was back and forth. It's like I hurt you, now I'm going to hurt you. Now you hurt me, and I'm going to hurt you. You want to get back, and this whole revenge thing, that we just are still dealing with, kind of in our culture now.
Yeah.
Is if you anger me, I'm going to get you back. I'm going to do something. It's like holding on to these prejudices and these to the point of not realizing what the source is. What are we trying to get to? What is the goal? And the goal is unifying, being one. And so how do we take that? And we've talked about this a little bit, I think maybe last time we were together, about how to create a conversation through this medium, or, kind of this format or other formats, where we can begin to talk to this. We're all kind of in agreement because we're I don't know, more homogenous, you know, we kind of come from a more open-minded perspective, or at least an exploration where we don't think we have all the answers. You know,
Right.
we're explorers, you know,
Yep.
and we are coming from it from a place of compassion or love, and wanting to know and not wanting to dominate. But how do we take this conversation to the point then where, like, if we have an impression or an understanding, like Tom he, you know, he didn't have all the answers when he started out. He was basically following his heart, you know,
Yeah.
following the chord. Um, a friend of mine called it the pink cord or pink thread or something of the
Yeah.
master, you know, like one of the master's garment was starting to unravel, and you'd grab a hold of that thread and you keep going
Yeah.
like that till you got to the end, you know, and you might pull off his clothes off at some point, but and reveal what's underneath all that. But so, you know, what's the response from this, you know?
What do you mean? What's the
What
response?
what do we do with this the story?
First
You know?
off, just the awareness that we are still in the process of trying to learn our way through what is the path.
Mhm.
Is there's this old Japanese saying, "Fudoa Shin," move without moving, and the reference, the imagery is the moon up in the sky is absolutely stationary, and yet its reflections on the water, constantly moving. But it is the moon. That's
Mhm.
a physical representation of this concept of, you know, in your heart, you have a sense in your heart of what is a truth there, but the outward representation of it has to continually change according to the situation, the people you're dealing with. Um, and it's trying to find that, what Gary Zukov calls in, authentic power. There's a difference between external power of all the money and guns and political power, and authentic power of the human heart. We're trying to discern what that is for ourselves, individuals, and how to apply it, what form it is to take in the physical.
Well, and Tom was willing to make a fool of himself on national television. I mean,
Yeah,
sometimes you may have to go beyond what your own, well, I can't do that. You
yeah,
know, I would make a fool out of myself, you know. There may be times when we have to just lay it out there, you know.
yeah.
If it's strong enough thing within yourself, maybe you're wrong. Um, but
This is where I'm very much at myself at the moment on a very personal level, is having just left a 12-year relationship that was, by all accounts, was working really good, but something in me said, this is not where I'm supposed to be. And boy, trying to learn that and discern it and trying to identify that's what's going on. She was a wonderful woman. She's still fantastic. I cannot say anything negative about her. It's just that we're on different spiritual paths. You know, we had a good life together, but my sense of what I needed to be doing diverged from what I could do with her. I don't really know how to explain that, but it fits that sense of, what are we doing? What are we trying to find, and what works really for us?
so that point at which then that was declared or acted on, what did you
Yeah.
go through with that?
Hell, mostly hell. It was
because you had to break through that. I mean, you had to at some point do something or say something or whatever.
yeah, I finally sat down to talk with her and just broke down and bawled like a baby for uh, most of the day, trying to explain to her how important all of this was to me. I was beginning to have a lot of really unusual medical problems. Um, Angioedema, swelling of the lips or hands or feet, um, afibrillation of the heart, uh, vertigo, um, just a whole lot of things that I could tell internally were all due to my internal stress of knowing I'm not where I'm supposed to be and still trying to stay there anyway. I finally got to the point where I was scared that the next thing that might happen, I might not be able to recover from. It's been since this is February, been since September, and almost all of them are gone. They're continually fading away as my internal struggle settles down. But uh, the point that's your comment that started all this is the sense of looking like a fool. I really look like a fool for leaving her to be where I am now. You know, it's like you gave up a house and a garage and a basement shop and a good location, and I've moved into a spare room at my son's house. Because my spiritual path says I need to. Well, all the indications since then, if you want to try and read the tea leaves in whatever's going around you, this is where I'm supposed to be right now. You know, we'll see what the future brings, but that willingness to make a fool of yourself really, when you said that, just really struck home for me.
Hmm. Hmm.
It took a
Couple
lot of
of,
bravery. Yes.
yeah, just a few comments here too, as we're nearing the hour here I, what a great opportunity to observe, to listen, and this is sort of just some of the thoughts I had. First of all, I started off with this powerful, profound story, sort of demonstrating the ripple effect that Tom had on others to really help with the situation. And that was my understanding of Tom was one of these key people that helped to have this instrumental effect, that helped the world today. And so that was part of his ripple effect. And then in your sharing an account of the story, it sort of evolved into a ripple effect amongst ourselves, right? And so all of a sudden, here's Tom, really sharing, about the experience, and then really going into, this is where we are really today. And isn't it interesting? We're sitting here and talking about this, and Richard, your reflection in terms of, how it really has related to you. And, myself, just very quickly, is that, this is this time that, as what started off this whole concept of the ripple effect, was this inner awareness. And that's, as I didn't have a death experience, but I have these sort of profound moments where I know it's not my language. I'm not saying that of ego, just it's something that's really come to me, is to really begin to reach out and rekindle these stories and connections. And, to me, that was really based on a few weeks before, through the pandemic, a realization is that we're at a major wake-up call for humanity, a major wake-up call. And there are so many pieces of it as I sat back and started to think about it. And the pandemic just sort of brought it all together. You began to see it. And here we are, as the year 2020 it was in. 2020 is the number given to ideal sight. And here we are being the gift of this ideal sight to now what's going on. So we can see it, but now what do we do about it? And here we are, beginning this effort, communicating. Tom, as I recall from an email I think you had to Richard, is where your daughter was saying that her view is that this is really important to get this information shared to the people of her generation, right? And so here, look at this right here. the ripple effect, right? The other thing that I just want to comment to the person out there is that, here's 4 men, at least 3 men and a lion, from what I can see here. Whether Jeff has really drifted off back into the ethereal level or not, we'll find out in just a moment. But anyways, is that here we are as 4 men. 4 men. I'll be right with you, Jeff. But we're 4 men, right? And think of I know I grew up in the era that, was the John Wayne was the image of a man, and that's what we were supposed to be, to live up to this rough and tough kind of thing. We didn't show our emotions. And what are we demonstrating right here? Is the fact that we're demonstrating, like Richard, with your own story about the divorce and how you felt a fool, is we're role modeling, I hope, and I believe, a different way of being, where we can let go of some of the ego and really begin to reflect on what's going on. And that's been a common denominator, I bet, and I'm sure of, but I would say I'll bet, for each of us in our growth as a spiritual being is letting go of the facades we used to wear for sake of having these kinds of conversations. And now not afraid to put them out there, because Richard, I didn't know, but Oprah's watching today. And I didn't tell you that. And so here she is now knowing you're a fool. No, only kidding.
Well, she could be.
She could, in spirit. In my
you never know.
No, but in any case, I just wanted to share that perspective and appreciate really the time today and how the conversation really evolved. I like that this to be continued. This is the kind of thing that, as we role model, really, who said it? The change we want to see in others. Gandhi or somebody, right? Be the change you want to see in others. Is as we're role modeling that right here, I think that's outstanding. Because, which I can so much appreciate, relate to, just going through a marriage, ending after 20 years, same kind of a thing. We are just recount before, just showing Tom Sawyer's thing, which is we're not showing right here, but his words to me, which I had in my blog about this very question, about the end of a relationship we do, and here it is so profoundly portraying the fact is there's different callings for each of us.
Oh,
hey, speaking of calling,
the electricity.
Is the electricity on?
The electricity's on.
I can go turn the generator off now. The whole reason why this happened was we had an ice storm. We didn't say anything about this to anybody, but we had an ice storm, and so power's been off, the better part of 2 days now. And so Jeff is next door. He has a few extension cords out of my generator, but not the whole house. So now I can go unplug the generator, and but I wouldn't know that unless Jeff, has still part of his house on the grid, I'm off the grid, has the news. Now I can go.
See, that's what Jeff is the perfect time. The light came on.
Well, the light
to shine you, right? The electricity has kept your. What do you call those the thermal images, or the thing, your thermal image alive? So, hey, time to hear from you. You got a couple of minutes here, so jump on in.
And I was wondering, because I've been looking at Chamundi, the images of Chamundi. And I'll touch on that in a second. Chamundi, and the vehicle that she rides is a lion, hence the image. And I've been looking at that and listening.
I thought she was riding your head.
Well, now.
Oh, I see. Uh-oh.
Tom, go put the gas back in the meter.
You still there?
Yep.
My generator just ran out of gas. So now I can go turn the generator off. So I'm where Jeff was now.
Oh, this is priceless. We couldn't have asked for a better time here, right? Spiritual people doesn't mean we're very intelligent.
Or very practical.
No, I'm only kidding. Yeah, but yeah, continue, Jeff, if he's still there.
Yeah, here we are.
There we go.
Got my. Hi there.
Welcome back, Tom.
Oh, God.
Flashlight.
Yeah, the new guardian of the ethereal plane while Jeff is home.
Yes.
Yes.
It's
So,
just
Jeff, you were saying.
reincarnation right here, you know.
Can you hear me now?
Now we
Yes.
can hear you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
What happened is that the internet was plugged into one of those cords running from the generator.
Woo.
Oh my. So now Chamundi's reversed. Interesting. Anyway, part of what occurred to me as you all were talking, and you did the
Oops.
He's frozen up on my screen.
Yeah, it froze up. Oh, Jeff.
No, he got ate by the lion. I think.
I'm gonna have to run over next door and bring him over here now.
Doing this from another plane of existence.
No, this is priceless, right?
Well, you know, it's for anybody that knows what Mercury retrograde is, we are still in Mercury retrograde. And this is a perfect example of how that affects people who know Mercury retrograde will laugh this off and understand it.
Okay. Jeff, are you
Okay,
with
hear
us?
you.
Can you finish?
Yeah, you can't hear you.
are we back now?
Yes. Yes,
We
we're
are.
all back. Yeah.
And
Yes.
struggling to maintain it. Hold on,
Yes.
everybody. Hold on. It's a big one.
I got to get this out quick before it disappears again. Tom, you look like you're at a campfire.
Oh, well, you know. Oh.
Anyway, part of what occurred to me when you're talking about Islam,
Mm.
which I think is indicative of all of our traditions that we have tried to cast in stone, is that when you talk about the what Islam means and you talk about jihad, they're not referencing the outside material world. They're referencing what's happening inside.
Struggle.
It's like Chamundi. Chamundi is fierce against the demons that live inside of us. It has little to do with demons that might be outside of us. It's the same thing. The jihad is not with my neighbor. The jihad is with my jealousy. The jihad is with my inner pain, with my inner disconnect from the oneness we all seek. That's the jihad. And it is so fundamentally misunderstood that we find ourselves immersed in this material drama, thinking we have the right answer. And what we have is a mistaken identity and a mistaken belief in traditions that the founders all had the answers to. But as we progress,
Oh.
We'll wait for you.
Well,
He's having a little internal jihad there.
He's sending it telepathically now for those who are tuned in.
Well, and I think where he was going with that is that we're doing the same thing now in Law and Order. We're the whole idea of law and order. I mean, look what happened at the Capitol. Is that law and order? Is that the law and order you want? You're going to.
Now,
Guys.
all right. Well, this is the message to me that it's time to go.
They've already checked out.
Yeah, it is. But hey, you know, Richard, again, fantastic job. Thank you for sharing. And we'll reconvene because I think this really triggered a great follow-up from this whole thing. So got to close this session. Thanks for this outstanding close. Thanks for the great stories, the great impact of the stories, and living up to the name of the show, The Ripple Effect, which is what we're all doing. So hats off to you. We'll continue again. I think we'll have Tom and his daughter, lined up here to hear their experiences from their trips to Egypt.
Oh,
And
cool.
we'll continue this. Yep.
Yeah,
So
I'll make sure
should
we
be-
have enough gas to get through the whole session.
Yes.
Just
Yeah,
in
because that's a
case.
long trip. That's about 10,000 miles. Yes, to get to. Yes. So hey, guys, thanks again, man. Cheers.
Righty.
Cheers to
Love.
you.
Jai Jai.
Love and all. You bet. Bye-bye.